So in this video, I'm going to talk about the death of Dwayne Wade's cousin and how it connects to the Nebraska Cornhuskers, also the death of Sam Foltz earlier this year, the Nebraska Cornhusker punter. It even connects to Colin Kaepernick not standing during the National Anthem. I've been following so much Nebraska Cornhusker coding. There's been all of the Civil War type coding in the media, all the racial stories. And I mean, just think about all of that stuff in regards to Lincoln, Nebraska, Abraham Lincoln, the president during the Civil War. In gematria, which I'm going to show you here in a second, it's the practice of coding words into numbers. Abraham Lincoln equals 60. Lincoln, Nebraska also equals 60. And I'm going to leave a link in the description of How to Gematria to show you what I am talking about. The Freemasons, the Zionist Jews, and people alike, the Jesuits, the royal family, they are the people who created our language, and they created it so they could code things like this. And if you've seen my videos, and you've seen Zachary K. Hubbard's videos, and other people who are doing gematria, there's so many examples proving that this is really going on. These people control the sports leagues. They completely script them. They control movies. They control the media, all the media articles, they're always coded with gematria. They even created the calendar, and they sync things up with the gematria, and they sync it up to the calendar with people's birthdays, all kinds of things. Just watch the How to Gematria video that I'm going to leave in the description. It'll make a little bit more sense. They also use a lot of themes, which that's what I'm going to talk about a lot in this video, is there is a Teen Wolf connection to the Nebraska Cornhuskers stemming back clear to 2015, or possibly farther, but that's when I first started noticing it, and it connected back to the NBA All-Star Week, where the Teen Wolves, Andrew Wiggins won the Rising Star Challenge MVP, and then the next night on Valentine's Day, Zach LaVine, another Teen Wolf, won the Slam Dunk Contest, and he did the Michael Jordan Space Jam dunk. And think about Dwayne Wade going to the Chicago Bulls and how that fits in with Michael Jordan just a little bit, the Chicago Bulls. So anyway, I'm going to go back and recap a whole bunch, so hopefully this makes sense. This video is going to be pretty long, but please bear with me. I'm telling you, by the end of it, you're going to be like, holy cow, Dwayne Wade is, his cousin dying is literally connected to the Nebraska Cornhuskers, along with some other things. And I know if you're new to this, you're going to say, what does Dwayne Wade's cousin, being shot dead, have to do with anything? She was just shot dead. Well, that's at least the story that we're told. All these stories are coded, like I said, and they're all here to meet a certain agenda. And these people are sick. They literally kill people by the numbers every single day. I mean, every celebrity you ever see. I even seen Willy Wonka die today. Barely looked into it. Willy Wonka also connected to Chicago. But these people literally kill people for this reason, because they worship these numbers. And also, we get multiple stories that aren't even real, that we're just supposed to believe for a certain agenda. So, I don't know if this lady is even real and got shot, or if she really did get shot. But what I'm saying is they do both. They really do kill people, and they also really do make up tons of stories for a certain agenda, This one goes along with the whole racial stuff they've been pounding you with in the media, So let's go clear back to what I was talking about in the beginning, how it's connected to Teen Wolf. So, during the 2015 NBA All-Star Week, that just so happened to also fall on a Roman festival called Lupercalia, where they celebrate and sacrifice a wolf. But anyway, on the first day of that, the NBA All-Star Week, Andrew Wiggins, who was a 19-year-old Minnesota Timberwolf, right? A Teen Wolf. He won the MVP of the Rising Star Challenge. The very next night, a teammate of his, who was also 19 years old, Zach LaVine, won the Slam Dunk Contest, and he did the Space Jam dunk And Michael Jordan, I've shown a ton of stuff where he's super connected to Valentine's as well. He even wore the number 12 one time ever in his career. It was on Valentine's Day of 1990. Remember when he came back wearing the number 45? He wore number 45 for 22 games, and then he switched back to number 23 on the 23rd game. 45 in regards to Valentine's. Valentine's Day is the 45th day of the year. There's a whole bunch more Valentine's connections to Michael Jordan, but I want to move on a little bit. So Andrew Wiggins wins the Rising Star Challenge MVP. Then Zach LaVine wins the Slam Dunk Contest. And then Russell Westbrook won the MVP All-Star Game or whatever, right? The MVP in the All-Star Game. And notice this guy, well, his name even sounds like Loving a little bit, Lovine, but Russell Westbrook is from UCLA, just like Zach LaVine. So these two guys went to UCLA. Also, Andrew Wiggins, the guy who won the Rising Star Challenge MVP, he got traded from the Cavaliers to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Kevin Love, who was a Minnesota Timberwolf, right? Kevin Love also went to UCLA. And remember last year when Nebraska somehow got a bowl game and they went to Levi's Stadium, right? Think about Colin Kaepernick for a second. Nebraska went to Levi's Stadium where the 49ers play where Super Bowl 51 was. Nebraska even played UCLA in that. And I'll actually bring this back up as we move along here, but Nebraska had their new head coach, Mike Riley, this year. He replaced Bo Pelini, who had 67 wins with Nebraska. Nebraska finished the season 6-7. This guy was born on July 6th, which can even be written as 6/7. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in regards to that date. That was even the day of the Alton Sterling and Philando Castile stories. That's also the same day that Nancy Reagan was born. That's also the same day that Dwayne Wade got traded to the Miami Heat, or signed with the Chicago Bulls. And when they were interviewing the family of Alton Sterling, one of the things that really stuck out was this guy wearing a Miami Heat hat even. So here's the picture. Just wanted to show what I was talking about, this guy wearing the Miami Heat hat. Miami is also a very big connection to all of it. I talked about how it's connected to, or the death of Sam Foltz was connected to the 1971 National Championship. LSU versus Nebraska was the first one that Nebraska had ever won. Of course, Alton Sterling from Baton Rouge, where LSU plays. But that year, 1971, the Orange Bowl, of course, in Miami, and also the Super Bowl where the Colts beat the Cowboys was also in Miami, and a whole bunch of stuff that's connected to it, as I will get to as we move along. I mean, even think about it in regards to the Miami Dolphins. Think about their big sign last year in Ndamukong Suh, the former Nebraska player, the bullying scandal with Richie Incognito, the former Nebraska player, even the death of former Nebraska player Lawrence Phillips that we got on January 13th last year. Lawrence Phillips was even a Miami Dolphin for a few games. But anyway, let's move on. Like I said, I'll try to come back to a lot of this. There's just so much information. I'm trying to piece it all together to hopefully make it make more sense. So, the reason that Teen Wolf is so significant is because in the movie Teen Wolf that is not set or filmed in Nebraska, has Nebraska Cornhusker stuff all throughout the background. You know, there's this right in the very beginning when he goes in the coach's office. They have a Nebraska Cornhusker thing right here in their house. Even a license plate from Nebraska on their, whatever, the Wolf van. There's even the part where he's in the Civil War themed school play or whatever, right? The school plays about the Civil War. Think about the Civil War in Abraham Lincoln, Nebraska. And anyway, in this movie, they're called the Beavers. That's their mascot in this movie. And the mascot actually supposedly came from the Oregon State Beavers, which is very interesting because Nebraska's coach that they just got last year, Mike Riley, he's known mostly for coaching the Oregon State Beavers, right? Oregon, the 33rd state. If you write out Michael in gematria, it equals 33. If you write out Riley, it equals 33. He began coaching at the age of 33. I mean, seriously, what are the odds Nebraska gets the coach that's connected to the movie Teen Wolf even? Absolutely ridiculous, you know? Anyway, as the year went along, so fast forward after that All-Star week, just before the college football season, we got the death of this guy right here, Dean Jones, the actor. He died on 9/1, just before Nebraska's first game. But he is famous for the movie Herbie the Love Bug, right? Nebraska's mascot is Herbie. The car in this movie, even number 53, a number that was pretty big with Nebraska last year. Even when you think about it, if you write out, like N is the fifth letter, U breaks down to 3, a lot like 53 for NU. Also, Mike Riley in Gematria. Mike Riley, their new coach, even equals 53 in Gematria. He was born in the year 53. Anyway, moral of the story, this movie, or this guy dying, made me think Nebraska was going to have a non-Nebraska-like season, which they completely did. But it also made me think of the movie Tommy Boy, because in that movie, in the very beginning, you know, he graduates from college, and he writes down Herbie Hancock or whatever instead of John Hancock. Also, in the opening scene of the movie, when Tommy Boy is a little kid, he drops his American history book, and it has the number 239 written on the very bottom of the book. That's the only number on the book. Last year, we were in the 239th year of the United States. There was a whole bunch of stuff connected to Pope Francis's trip to the United States, and he came to the White House at 9:23 in the morning on 9/23, which in other countries they would write the date as 23/9, a lot like 239. So anyway, I'm going to start talking a little bit about Dwayne Wade then and how he connects in with this. And I'll talk about the death of Sam Foltz. I'll kind of intermingle that a little bit. There's just so much to think about. So Tommy Boy even. I also talked about Jerry Sandusky because this movie takes place in Sandusky, Ohio. And just after the Jerry Sandusky stuff, when Joe Paterno and Sandusky weren't coaching anymore, the next team that Penn State played was Nebraska. And it was a big old deal. I remember people praying on the field, all kinds of stuff, you know. And we just got Jerry Sandusky back in the news. On August 12th, they talked about Jerry Sandusky. He's testifying for the first time. So what are the odds Jerry Sandusky comes back up in the news? Also, Tommy Boy just so happened to graduate where he did Herbie Hancock and he got the D+ from Marquette University. Marquette University just so happens to be where Dwayne Wade went to college. Dwayne Wade went to college at Marquette as well, the same as Tommy Boy. And, you know, of course, Chris Farley also died in Chicago. Makes me wonder. But let's move on here to the whole point of everything I'm talking about. So last year, I remember specifically that Dwayne Wade and his wife, Gabrielle Union, attended the Nebraska game. It was even on the local news. Just lots of stuff. We're talking about Dwayne Wade being at the Nebraska game. If you don't remember this game, it was the game where Nebraska got upset by BYU on the Hail Mary. And I'll leave a link in the description, or 2 links actually. That game was the absolute most scripted game I've ever watched since knowing that games were scripted. Just absolutely coated with the number 34 and 43. Also the number 12 and 21. There was even Tanner Mangum for BYU. He wore number 12. He had to replace Tyson Hill, who got hurt for the 3rd time in 4 seasons. Literally, he came in, though, and then for some weird reason, they just moved the ball back to the 12-yard line for absolutely no reason. Didn't make any sense. Then they even stopped the clock at like 12:12. They stopped the clock one other time at 12:21. Just all kinds of stuff. It was even the game where Sam Foltz got hurt. It was Sam Foltz's 27th game. Sam Foltz wore the number 27. Terrell Newby, number 34, I believe, was the only guy helping him up. Just all kinds of 34, 43. Like I said, I'll leave the link in the description. Nebraska even loses on the Hail Mary that gave BYU 33 points. 33, of course, connected to Mike Riley in his first game. It's also the highest degree in Scottish Rite Freemasonry. Remember, I said Sam Foltz also got hurt in this game, and he didn't come back until the Miami game, which is very interesting in regards to Dwayne Wade, which I'll mention that again in a little bit. But that score of that game, remember the game was 33-33 with 33 seconds left, and then it went to overtime. And then literally number 71 on Nebraska was the one who cost them the game in overtime because he made a stupid hit at a bounce. Well, the word Nebraska equals 71. But also, this was the first time that Nebraska lost a home opener since 1985. And last year's season, every sport was coded to 85. The Royals hadn't won a World Series since 85. They won the World Series. Even the Iowa Hawkeyes, I covered a little bit. Iowa Hawkeyes had a season a lot like their season of 1985. The Alabama won the championship. The total score was 85. They beat Clemson or whatever. There was a bunch of other 85 in that as well. The quarterback wearing the wristband with 85 on it. The Super Bowl was connected to the 85 Bears. Villanova won the basketball championship. They hadn't won since 1985. I mean, just every one of them connected to 85. A ton of them connected to the Carolinas as well. Clemson, South Carolina, the Carolina Panthers. North Carolina loses to Villanova. We even had Coastal Carolina win the College World Series. The Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavalier is a follower of King Charles. The Carolinas are named after King Charles. Anyway, in regards to the 71 in Nebraska then, so Dwayne Wade's cousin, her name is Nikia Aldrich, and in Gematria, her name equals 71, just like Nebraska. And I hadn't had a whole lot of time to cover this story. I've just had a whole bunch of other stuff. I wasn't even online, but I watched Zachary K. Hubbard's video a couple days ago on it, and he talked a lot about 71 in the story. And she died 61 days before the start of the 71st NBA season that even starts on a date numerology of 71. If you write out the word finals, it equals 61. I'll leave a link to that video in the description as well. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff, you know. It was 144 days before Dwayne Wade's birthday on January 17th. If you write out the word 71, it equals 144. Also, I've been talking a whole lot in regards to the Chicago Cubs this year and how they're connected to the year 1871. That's when the Great Chicago Fire was. It was on October 8th, though, so it was 144 years ago even. You see the connection between 144 and 71. And then, of course, Nebraska 71. Punt equals 71. Sam Foltz died. He was the punter. And I'm going to list some more 71 stuff here in a second, but think about Gabrielle Union, too. Gabrielle Union, you know, the Union, Abraham Lincoln was the president of the Union, and they beat the Confederates. How fitting that she, is from Omaha, Nebraska, and a huge Cornhusker fan. I mean, just ridiculous. Anyway, last year I also talked about how Nebraska played in their bowl game that was in Levi's Stadium. It was also where Super Bowl 50 was being played. If you write out Super Bowl 50, it equals 71. Nebraska plays in what they call the Sea of Red, which when you think of the Sea of Red, you think about Moses, right? Moses parting the Red Sea or whatever. Moses equals 71. The Ten Commandments equals 71. Levi's Stadium, Moses was in the tribe of Levi. And think about it in regards to Lincoln. Moses freed the slaves. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. So another interesting thing about Dwayne Wade was the day that he was born. We've been seeing this number a whole lot, 117. He was born on January 17th. That's a lot like 117. The game that he went to last year was on September 5th, which is the day that leaves 117 days in the year. Also, Colin Kaepernick then. So, you know, his team plays in Levi's Stadium. He didn't stand during the National Anthem. but that's where Nebraska played the Foster Farms Bowl. And this happened on the same day that Dwayne Wade's cousin was supposedly killed. So Dwayne Wade's cousin's killed. Colin Kaepernick doesn't stand during the National Anthem on the exact same day. In this article about Kaepernick, they even compare him to Muhammad Ali, or they just talk about how Muhammad Ali stood up for what he believed in. Muhammad Ali, a complete Freemason, tons and tons and tons of Freemason coding to Muhammad Ali. If I can find that video, I'll leave a link to that as well in the description. Anyway, Muhammad Ali, though, also born on January 17th. He died of Parkinson's disease that equals 117 in Gematria. Also on this article about Kaepernick, the first tweet that CNN gives us is at 1:17 p.m. by Kaepernick7, or Joseph Bailey. Also, the game that he didn't play, or he sat down, it was against Green Bay, which is super duper interesting. It's in Wisconsin. Wisconsin is where Sam Foltz and Mike Sadler both died. Of course, Marquette University, also in Wisconsin. There's a big Wisconsin connection into it as well. Wisconsin equals 44 in Gematria. Nebraska, with the S exception, equals 44. The word kill equals 44 in Gematria. And, you know, a lot of this is connected to the death of Prince. Believe it or not, just tons of stuff all year connected to the death of Prince. Prince said the only thing we can go by is prophecy. And I made a video about Lil Wayne emergency landing in Omaha after having a seizure, but he was coming from Wisconsin and going to Los Angeles, and he had to emergency land his plane or jet, just like how Prince, days before he died, he supposedly had to land due to an emergency and whatnot. Just reminded me a lot of Prince. Talked about Lil Wayne doing the same. Lil Wayne equals 38 in Gematria. Omaha equals 38. Also, Louisiana equals 38. Minnesota equals 38, where Prince is from. Prince equals 38 in Gematria. I also talked about the death of Lawrence Phillips in regards to Obama. Obama gave his final State of the Union on January 12th. The very next day, he went to Omaha, Nebraska, and gave a speech at UNO, which is part of the University of Nebraska system. And that was also the same day that Lawrence Phillips, the ex-Nebraska Cornhusker player, had died. The very next day, Obama went to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That's where LSU plays. In Baton Rouge, Obama gave a speech at McKinley High School. And think about the assassinated president, William McKinley. And what's very interesting about that in regards to the Alton Sterling shooting and then the Philando Castile shooting that we got the stories on July 6th, the same day. William McKinley's vice president, when he got assassinated, was Teddy Roosevelt. And just days before William McKinley was assassinated, Teddy Roosevelt gave a speech about carrying the big stick. And he gave that speech in Falcon Heights, Minnesota. And that is where Philando Castile was supposedly murdered. And just think about the Alton Sterling one in Baton Rouge, and Obama gave a speech at McKinley High School. So interesting, you know, Roosevelt gives the speech about the big stick. If you look up where the name Baton Rouge comes from, it comes from the red stick of the Huma people that marked their hunting boundaries. So how interesting. McKinley High School, then the Teddy Roosevelt stuff, both talking about the big stick or a stick in general. Just pretty ridiculous, you know? So I'll talk more about that as we move on as well. But one of the things in this San Francisco-Green Bay game that I noticed was the receiving leader was Geronimo Allison. And I talked about him last year because he played for Illinois and he caught the game-winning pass against Nebraska. And there was a whole bunch of significant things in regards to his name. He played college, before he played at Illinois, he played at Iowa Western University, that's in Council Bluffs, Iowa. I talked all about the Mormons, and that is, Council Bluffs, Iowa used to be called Canesville. It was the beginning of the Mormon Trail. And think about Dwayne Wade being at the BYU game. The BYU is the Mormons. or, you know, a very huge Mormon school. And I've talked about this before. I don't know exactly what the whole point of it is, but remember how I said in Tommy Boy they had the 239 written on the book? Last year we were in the 239th year of the United States. The Book of Mormon has also 239 chapters. Joseph Smith, the founder of, you know, the Mormon religion, where he found the golden plates and all that, he even died at the age of 38, which once again connects back into all of the stuff that's going on with the date of July 6th. Talked about Mike Riley being born on that day. It's the day of the Alton Sterling and the Philando Castile stories we got in the news. It's the day that Dwayne Wade, literally, Dwayne Wade even signed with the Chicago Bulls. Brigham Young, who BYU was named after, he even died at the age of 76. Also in regards to Tommy Boy, and he talks about Herbie Hancock instead of John Hancock. Herbie Hancock, also from Chicago, and he's 76 years old. Also interesting that he was born on a date that syncs up with Chris Farley. I made a video just a few videos back about all the fat comedians dying, and it's connected to the number 124. The day he was born could even be written as, you know, 12/4, a lot like 124. If you write out Chris Farley's name, it equals 124. John Candy died 124 days after his birthday, just like Sam Kinison. Tons of stuff, you know. This was also the day that the Civil War began in the United States, also the day that Freddie Gray was arrested. It's even the 102nd day of the year. If you write out Herbie Hancock in Gematria, Herbie Hancock even equals 102, born on the 102nd day of the year. So, you know, who knows? Possibly something significant coming up with this guy. Anyway, another interesting thing in regards to Geronimo Allison is his name Geronimo. Geronimo was also the Indian, and I've been talking about this Native American theme that they've been doing a lot in the media. I don't know what it's all leading to. I talked about the Cleveland Indians possibly even. Anyway, Geronimo was the Native American that Prescott Bush and other Skull and Bones members stole his skull and bones or whatever. In Nebraska, their defense is the black shirts. They have all kinds of connections to the skull and bones. They even throw up the skull and cross, or, you know, they throw up the bones. Nebraska also has a huge connection to skull and bones. Their defense is called the black shirts. They even throw up the bones, you know, the cross of the bones. If you write it out in Gematria, skull and bones equals 41. The coach who was the head coach when they started the black shirts, his name equals 41. He died on May 9th. If you write May 9th out, it equals 41. Black shirts equals 41. They play in Memorial Stadium. Memorial equals 41. Husker fans equals 41. There's some other ones that aren't in here. They're farther down or something, but just wanted to point out there's a lot of connections in regards to the Skull and Bones and also Nebraska and the defense. So just interesting in regards to Geronimo Allison. Also, you know, he played for Illinois as well. Illinois is where Abe Lincoln's from. It's where Obama came out of politically as well. Also, this Colin Kaepernick game then on 8/26, and then Dwayne Wade's cousin dying on 8/26. Last year on 8/26 was when we got that big fake Roanoke shooting in the news. And they killed Allison Parker. A whole bunch of 58 in that story. The word Freemasonry equals 58. But the guy who supposedly murdered her, his name Vester Flanagan, that equals 145. If you write out Chicago, Illinois, it also equals 145. And just keep in mind, on October 8th this year, it will be the 145th anniversary of the Great Chicago Fire. I'll leave a link to the Nebraska-Illinois game as well in the description. There's lots of good information in this video. Some of the stuff I talked about, I believe how I thought the Cubs were going to win the World Series and whatnot. Just right after this, I discovered that a guy dressed as Pope Francis caught the ball at the Kansas City game, and I changed my mind and said I thought that it was going to be the Kansas City Royals and whatnot. But there's just tons of good information. whether I was right or wrong about my prediction or whatever, you know? Doesn't change the fact that it was coded. So Dwayne Wade then, born on January 17th, he goes to the Nebraska game on the day that leaves 117 days until the end of the year. I showed how Colin Kaepernick also connected to 117. This year, 2016, also just so happens to be the Nebraska Cornhuskers' 117th season, being called the Cornhuskers. In the death of Sam Foltz, we also got the death of the former Michigan State player, Mike Sadler. So we had the Nebraska player die and also the Michigan State player die. But one of the players that survived was the LSU player, Colby Delahousse, or however you say his name. And I'll talk about why that's significant in a second. But the two players that died, Nebraska and Michigan State. Last year, Nebraska upset Michigan State, and they did it on November 7th, which 11/7, a lot like 117. This was also the same weekend that Minnesota Viking Teddy Bridgewater got knocked out. And think about Bridgewater in regards to Vester Flanagan up here and Allison Parker. That shooting was the Bridgewater shooting, so just something to think about in regards to Dwayne Wade's cousin dying on this day and Kaepernick not standing and whatnot. But Bridgewater was also knocked out that game, and he was knocked out by, I can't think of the guy's name right now, but it was a St. Louis Ram, which also reminds me once again of the death of Lawrence Phillips, because he went to the Rams or whatever. And I talked about Lawrence Phillips, how he even played in Miami for a couple games. The guy who knocked out Teddy Bridgewater, he was from Miami. Teddy Bridgewater from Miami. There's lots of connections to Miami, you know, Dwayne Wade leaving Miami to go to the Chicago Bulls. And I'll try to talk about that here in a second. Anyway, Sam Foltz then, he dies on July 23rd, which is 35 days before Dwayne Wade's cousin dies. If you write out Nebraska the small way, Nebraska even equals 35 in gematria. So what's interesting is, in regards to this wreck, so Sam Foltz, the Nebraska punter, dies. Mike Sadler, Michigan State player, dies. The LSU player survived. And in regards to Miami, Nebraska won its first ever national championship in the Orange Bowl in Miami in 1971, and they just so happened to beat LSU. This also just so happened to be Michigan State's 17th season. Anyway, Nebraska also won this game 12-17, so Nebraska had 17 points even. The game was on 1/1 of 71, and it was in Miami at the Orange Bowl. Also, 17 days later in the year 71, on January 17th, 1-7, the Colts beat the Cowboys in Super Bowl V, and that was also played in the Orange Bowl in Miami. The reason I mentioned the score up here as well, 12-17, was because Pope Francis was also born on December 17th, 1217. When he became the Pope, he was 76 years old, in regards to what I've talked about previously with the 76s. So this year we're going into the year 17. What's super interesting, if you read out Orange Bowl equals 112. Super Bowl 51 is going to be played in Houston. Houston equals 112. This year's even the 112th World Series. If you write out Sam Foltz in gematria, Sam Foltz equals 112. He was born on January 21st, which can be written as 21/1, a lot like the reflection of 112. He even died 211 days after the Foster Farms Bowl, which was his last game. So 2/11/2/11. He died 1 month, 12 days before Nebraska's opening game against Fresno State this year. Dwayne Wade plays for the Chicago Bulls. If you write out Chicago Bulls, 112, just like Sam Foltz. Also in regards to Teen Wolf and Mike Riley, Oregon State Beavers in gematria equals 211, also 76. How interesting that Mike Riley was the coach there. Also in regards to LSU in the 76, Leonard Fournette, their running back, his name in gematria equals 76. The coach, Leslie Edwin Miles, equals 76. And then, of course, we got the Alton Sterling stuff and Philando Castile stories on 7-6. If you write out Alton Sterling in gematria, it equals 67, the reflection of this. Also, Philando Castile equals 67. Blue Lives Matter equals 67 and 76. Even established on a date numerology of 67. Dwayne Wade signs with the Bulls on 7-6. And in previous videos, I even mentioned how YouTube always copyright strikes my stuff. So my last video, or they leave weird comments. My last video, I talked about somebody commenting on my old Kanye West video right as I was making a post about Kanye West and Lil Yachty. A while back when the Lakers beat the Warriors, it was also the same day that Nancy Reagan died, and I was getting weird comments, once again showing me the date of 9/19, but Nancy Reagan was also born on 7/6, and we've had all kinds of stuff in regards to the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan in the news. Even John Hinckley Jr. is supposedly going to be getting out of prison. Also, lots of stuff in regards to Prince, like I said. Remember, Prince died on Queen Elizabeth's 90th birthday on April 21st. If you go from April 21st to any day in July, like April 21st to July 1st, 7-1, a span of 71 days. So the death of Prince was 76 days before 7-6. Prince was even born on June 7th, which can be written as 6/7 or 7/6. He died 67 days after Vanity died on the last day of Lupercalia. The word blood sacrifice equals 67 as well. So there's something definitely significant about this date, connecting to other dates. Also, in regards to Prince and the 211 and the 112, Prince died on the 112th day of the year this year. I even talked about how when The Simpsons killed Prince, the episode came out on November 2nd, 11/2, a lot like 112. Anyway, also in regards to the 112 then, just before Obama went to Omaha and then Baton Rouge, which is very similar to connecting to the Cornhuskers and LSU, but he gave his final State of the Union on January 12th, 1/12, a lot like 112. LSU also just so happens to be going into their 112th season this year. So since Dwayne Wade's wife is actually from Omaha, Nebraska, I decided to look her up a little bit. She's the reason that Dwayne Wade attended the Nebraska football game. And, you know, right off the bat, look at her name in gematria. Gabrielle Monique Union. 112. Oh, the odds. Also, 238 the big way. Dwayne Wade's cousin dies on the 238th day of the year. Also, I mentioned how 238 was showing up a lot in the Philando Castile, Alton Sterling stuff. They made it clear that Baton Rouge has a 238,000 population. CNN even shortened up the video of the Philando Castile to 2 minutes, 38 seconds instead of the 8-minute video that it was. And I didn't go back and look. I know there was more that I've talked about in that shooting. There was other 238s, but just wanted to make a point of it. Also, just her first name equals 71, like Nebraska. And look where she went to college. She also went to Nebraska, but she went to Nebraska and also UCLA, right? Just like what I talked about in the very beginning, how Teen Wolf had foreshadowed this. And also in regards to that, think of Minnesota and Minneapolis and the Timberwolves. And also Kevin Garnett, I never mentioned, who was the original Teen Wolf. But there's a whole lot more to that. But just think about that in regards to the death of Prince. Prince, you know, from the Minneapolis Sound and whatnot. Also, I noticed that she's 43 years old. Dwayne Wade is 34 years old. The game that they went to, if you watch the video that I'm going to leave in the description, it was all about 34 and 43, like I said in the very beginning. There was also a number of 12 connections. If you read out Bulls equals 12. In the Foster Farms Bowl, the total score, UCLA versus Nebraska, was 66. Bulls, the big way, equals 66. Anyway, the 43 also goes along with the 112. Sam Foltz, he died 1 month, 12 days before the Nebraska season began, but that's also 43 days. And they play Fresno State on the opening game. Fresno State equals 43. Nebraska's been the conference champion 43 times. The Michigan State guy who died, his name Mike Sadler, equals 43 in gematria. Dwayne Wade left the Miami Heat to go to the Chicago Bulls. Miami Heat equals 43. Anyway, the very first movie that this girl was ever in, Gabrielle Union, she was in She's All That. Now, how ridiculous. This movie stars Freddie Prinze Jr. and also Rachel Lee Cook. Rachel Lee Cook, she's from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Freddie Prinze Jr. was born on March 8th, 3/8, right? The word Prince equals 38. He's born on 3/8. I know it's not spelled the same way, but, people think Freddie Prince, Also, another movie that she was in was Love and Basketball, which is just interesting in regards to her being married to Dwayne Wade, the basketball player and whatnot. This movie came out on April 21st, 2000. I mean, just think about that. That's the day that Prince died. That's Queen Elizabeth's birthday. Also, the director in this movie, it says, marks the directing debut of screenwriter Gina Prince Bythewood. So her maiden name is Gina Prince. How odd is that, Another connection to Prince. She went to school at UCLA as well. Prince said all we can go by is prophecy. She was born on June 10th, 10/6. The word prophecy equals 106. I guarantee that's not a coincidence. That's how it's all planned out. I see this type of stuff constantly. Anyway, in regards to the 7/6 again, one of the super interesting things, so like I said, I was getting shown the date of 9/19. In every video they do stuff, it's always 9/19. Lately they've been showing me how 7/6 is connected to 9/19. This was the day that Pope Francis went to Cuba when he began his trip to the United States and whatnot. But also last year, Sam Foltz got hurt in the BYU game and he didn't come back until the Miami game, right? The Miami game. And that was played on 9/19, the same day Pope Francis arrived in Cuba. Think about Miami and its connection to Cuba. But I'll leave a link to this video as well. I made a 2-part video, I think, on this game as well. It was the game where there was 33-33 with 33 seconds left. Like I said, and then they lost in overtime because number 71 made a late hit out of bounds. But also in this game, there's a whole bunch of foreshadowing to Moses and whatnot. There was a guy named Bush, and there was also a guy named Burns. You think of Moses talking to the burning bush. 2 players on Miami even got ejected for targeting. I believe it was a guy with the last name Bush and a guy with the last name Carter, which was super interesting in regards to 9/19, a lot like 91 both ways. If you write out September 19th, it equals 91. Also, Jimmy Carter and George Bush were born 112 days apart. Jimmy Carter turned 91 on October 1st, the day that leaves 91 days until the end of the year. Also the same day we got the Roseburg, Oregon shooting. And I wonder if the 117 has something to do with it. If you write out 117, 117 equals 217 the big way, and also 91. Once again, it's a number I've seen all over with the Nebraska Cornhuskers in elimination. Remember the death of the Dean Jones, the actor of Herbie. He died on 9/1 last year, September 1st. Remember Miami Hurricanes beat Duke last year on the 91-yard run, which is kind of interesting. It was an elimination for them, but anything that added up to 91 or connected to 91 in a different way, I noticed it was elimination. Even Cameron Wake of the Miami Dolphins, number 91, tore his ACL or his Achilles tendon. Nebraska's football player Pearson L. DeMornay, or whatever his name is, it equals 91 in gematria. He got hurt last year, celebrating a touchdown. Even in regards to 919 in Omaha, Nebraska then, which isn't Lincoln, but like I said, it's connected through Nebraska, we got the death of Omaha police officer Carrie Orozco, who was born on September 19th. And the last time that a shooting like that happened in Omaha, Nebraska was Jason Ty Pratt, who died on September 19th. I mean, that day I've just talked about a whole lot. I don't know exactly what's up with it, but they've shown it to me for multiple years now. So anyway, a few more things I want to point out in regards to some of the stuff that's connected to Nebraska and also connected back to Chicago. We just got the death of Brian Clausen, the NASCAR racer who wrecked in Kansas, and then they took him to Lincoln, Nebraska, where he died at the hospital. But he died at the age of 27. Sam Foltz wore number 27. You know, Dwayne Wade's cousin. If you just write cousin equals 27. But I mean, this guy, he dies 145 days after the Amtrak derailment that was in Kansas, that was going to Chicago with 145 people on it. This guy, even his name in Gematria equals 145 in Gematria, just like Chicago, Illinois. We got the story on August 8th, the day that leaves 145 days in the year, connecting back to Chicago. He dies in Lincoln, Nebraska. I mean, there was all kinds of parallels to this guy. And the number 53, I forgot Nebraska Cornhuskers, or just Nebraska in general. Nebraska equals 53 with the S and K exception. If you write out Nebraska Cornhuskers, it equals 222, just like the word Amtrak, which is interesting. This guy connected to the Amtrak derailments. Lawrence Phillips was even born on May 12th. And last year in Philadelphia, we got the big Philadelphia Amtrak derailment. All kinds of stuff I've talked with Philadelphia. I even talked about how the movie Tommy Boy connects back to Philadelphia with Penn State. But I think I've gone on long enough. There's just so much more I could talk about and go in depth with. I was trying to just explain it the best I could without overlapping so much stuff, but it's just so deep and interrelated. It's amazing that it's even can be done, you know? And I'm not sure exactly where they're going with it or what the whole point is. There's so much Civil War type coding. It makes me wonder if there's a big event that they're prepping us for and getting us ready for by putting all of the racial stuff in the news and whatnot. Or if they're showing us maybe a possible rematch of the 71 season or something along the lines of that, which could be very possible. Maybe though, they're coding it just to connect to other events, you know? They're connecting the 71 championship to whatever, you know, Ohio State does equal 112. Maybe it's something to do with Ohio State. You know what I mean? Just something that connects to the 71 championship. LSU absolutely connected though. Even the death of Sam Foltz and whatnot was super connected to the Indianapolis Colts. So I'll just show this again really quick. Lawrence Phillips died 192 days before Sam Foltz. If you write out Foster Farms Bowl, it equals 192. That was Sam Foltz's last game. But also the guy who lived in the car wreck with him, the LSU player, Colby Della Houssaye or whatever, 192 at Gematria. Indianapolis Colts also equal 192. And remember, they were the one who won the Super Bowl in 1971, the same year Nebraska beat LSU. So, you know, we'll see, but it's definitely absolutely coded to the Nebraska Cornhuskers. There's no other reason Dwayne Wade would go to that football game, and they make a big deal about it. And it has all the numbers that connect to Dwayne Wade's birthday. Also, you know, his cousin's name equals 71, just like Nebraska. It's no coincidence. So, you know, thanks for listening. I know it's long. There's a whole lot of information that goes into it. It's very, very deep. Like I said, it's amazing that it can be done. I'm going to quit rambling, though. You know, just know that all of it's rigged. All of this. All of these stories, all of these headlines, they're all for a reason. They all connect to certain events for a certain agenda. Actually, one last thing that I'm wondering about in regards to Valentine's and the Valentine's coding, if it has something to do with the Valentine's Day massacre that was in Chicago in 1929, and the reason that I think that is for the fact that it's connected to the 1971 Orange Bowl championship and also the 1971 Super Bowl, and the total score of both of them games summed to 29. This happened in 1929. And in regards to the connection to Wisconsin and whatnot, Lincoln Park, where this happened, just so happens to be connected to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where Marquette University is and whatnot. Literally, the street called Clark Street, it says, before Green Bay Trail became Clark Street, it stretched as far as Green Bay, Wisconsin, and was part of what is still Green Bay Road in Milwaukee County, Wisconsin. So who knows, just something interesting. Makes me wonder. This was on the north side. Dwayne Wade's cousin got shot on the south side. But we've seen a lot of redemption stuff, somebody pointed out in the comments. For example, Peyton Manning redeeming himself and winning the Super Bowl. LeBron James doing the same thing, winning the NBA Finals this year. Even the Kansas City Royals, who lost and then to the Giants and then last year won. You know what I mean? Lots of stuff like that. Makes me wonder if they're just kind of doing the opposite. And maybe for some weird reason it is going to be Nebraska at LSU. And LSU is going to win this year or something like that. But anyway, like I said, I'm done. Have a good one.